Good afternoon, Joanna.
Good afternoon, Debbie.
How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm very good, thanks. Now, you know I'm doing this thing, DDPK, which seemingly Damien O'Connor from Brown Bag told me yesterday was the name of some Korean newspaper or something, North Korean newspaper.
That does not surprise me.
Anyway, it's Debbie Deegan's Pink Kitchen. And all I was doing, Joanna, from the beginning was just chatting to people really that have a view on COVID and also have a positive spin on everything always, because there's so much negativity in our world at the moment, in everybody's head, that I just think it's nice to reach out to people who have views on it and want to, try and maybe give some, pearls of wisdom of what we should be doing. So obviously, with your background, you're a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
Author of 15 Minutes Parenting. And I think you've another one. Am I right in thinking you've another one coming out in May?
I do. Exactly. So the first book was 0 to 7 years. The 8 to 12 years with the 0 to 7 are out again in May in the UK and beyond as well. So previously it was here in Ireland. And the teen book will be out later in the year in October. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you should do one for marriages as well after this.
You're not the first person to suggest that. There could be a boom industry in that, is what I'm gathering.
Yes, there could be a boom industry for that as well. Yeah, definitely. But anyway, so we've obviously worked together in the past. And the one thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about, and not to be putting the idea in people's heads, but we worked together when Beslan happened.
Yeah. Which
was the tragedy in Russia where all the children were killed in the school. And then I remember when Sandy Hook happened, and I don't mean to be depressing about all these subjects, but Joe Duffy actually called me and made the connection between the people in the town of Sandy Hook and the people in the town of Beslan after the tragedy, and the trauma that everybody actually had to live with after all of this kind of thing.
Exactly. Now,
you don't want to be putting trauma in people's heads, because I'm one of those weird people that I just don't let it in. I just do not let it in. I've got, I don't know what kind of an impermeable thing to it. And I just kind of think you have to get back up and get out there in a positive way, because, so what's your impression on where are people going to be after this? Because there's been so much drama and trauma, probably the biggest thing that's ever happened in most of our lives, actually.
I agree with you. And I think, it's not about whether we let it in or not, because trauma finds its way in, whether we want it there or not. It's how we get it out. And for example, you do this. You're very creative. You're innately creative. You look at situations and you find a hook and an opportunity, and you're actually processing in a very doing rather than saying way. And the people who have creative outlets, who have that capacity to process, release, work things through, will find that way. It's people who maybe don't or haven't had cause to access or tap into that within themselves that may need extra time. I think as well what we're going to see, I always worry about frontline service providers anyway, because they're constantly in receipt of projections and things that they're exposed to on an ongoing basis. So it's a bit like being out in a fine mist. If you're out in a downpour of rain, you're getting wet and you stick a brolly up really quick or you come inside. But if you're walking out in a fine mist, you often don't even know that you're wet until you're soaked through. You don't feel it happening. And when you're immersed in this kind of rolling trauma that a situation like this can be, especially for frontline service providers, and I would include not just emergency service providers, but anybody who is compelled to work and to keep systems going, be that stacking supermarkets or delivering post or whatever it is, if you have to be out there, then you're a frontline service provider. And I think those people are going to need specialized help beyond the standards, because there are, employee assistance programs, there are mental health support services available, particularly in the medical field. But I think it needs to be specialized trauma support with this. And it's often going to be many people's first experience of trauma. And for other people, this isn't their first experience of a traumatic situation, and it may re-trigger or indeed amplify something that they've already experienced or been living with. And we just have to be very mindful and tuned to ourselves, like going inwards to see, how am I coping? And look at, like any of us, on a daily basis, some days are better than others. But generally speaking, how am I coping, and how do I know when I'm not coping? Because that's going to be different for everybody.
And is it, I suppose, like Irish people are huggers and they're big funeral goers, and we're hearing this on the radio all day long. It's so not like us to, to commiserate with people, shake their hand, give them a hug and all that kind of thing. So definitely it's absolute trauma for the frontline people. But as you say, they have some training for that, I think.
And
not maybe the younger nurses don't, or the younger maids maybe don't have it. So are you saying then that we're going to need to look at like all our super value staff and our, you know, Aldi and Little People and all of these people that are actually serving us all every day?
Absolutely.
And that all of their companies are going to have to look after them going forward?
I would really hope so, and in a meaningful way, because some people will need to access that at deeper levels than others. But those are people who are putting their health and lives in danger on a daily basis so that we can get our groceries done, and are at the receiving end of, not from everybody, but from some people, of aggression, frustration, those kinds of irritations. Why isn't the thing I want in stock, and why can't I find what I need? And those people are having to sit there and know that every person they're dealing with could be making them sick. And that's a very heightened state of emotional arousal to have to go to work in all day, every day. And yeah, I think that's absolutely a trauma, and something that will maybe be overlooked unless it's named enough and named out there. But I think you're right. We are such a tactile nation. We love to hug, to kiss. We're always up in each other's faces. You know, there isn't a thing in Ireland that we don't traditionally solve with a cup of tea and cake, or you know, condolences with tea and cake, celebrations with tea and cake. We do that. We're nurturers. And this is really challenging all of us to step away from that, or find more creative outlets to express that nurture, because we can't do it in our traditional physical way. And that's really difficult. The funeral thing, I think, is incredibly difficult, because it is so much part of the Irish psyche to do the big funeral, the wake, the days long, you know, the coming together of people, the sharing of stories. And the people who are losing their family members at this time and cannot access that are going to need significant grief support going forward to work.
Yeah, like realistically, we don't really have that much support. I mean, it's short. It's an area that's not exactly swamped with help. I mean,
no.
I mean, just before this, we were listening to like Pieta House on the radio talking about the fact that teenagers were waiting 18 months on therapists if they couldn't afford a private one.
Yeah.
So like, how
and even in the private field, you know, even in the private field, and I've been talking to some colleagues, because I've worked in both the public and private sectors, and the waiting list for private therapists are not 18 months maybe, but they're also significant, because demand is huge. And, you know, many of us are managing to do some work online, which is, you know, something maybe some of us did. Like, I always had a few clients that I worked with online who couldn't leave their homes for various reasons. But, you know, some people, this is very new. It's again a creative approach. Look, how do we keep this going? We know in times like this, the demand for a service like therapy or any mental health service, it actually goes up. It doesn't go down. And we're also not in the business where we can simply say to people, well, you know, we're in lockdown now, so I'll see you whenever, and I can't give you any kind of guideline on that. That's just not the nature of the therapeutic relationship, and it cannot be. So it is incumbent on us to find creative ways to sustain those alliances and contacts as best we can. But I also think, you know, that we have to keep finding a fun. I was just looking through a story about how to talk about, you know, COVID-19 with young children, like really young children, like under 5. I have a toddler, as you know, and she's quite fixated about it and loves to talk about it and explain what's a good germ and a bad germ. She likes the scientific detail on it. And we were looking at a little book to do on this, and there were 3 steps that jumped out at me that we were able to hold in mind. We have to do 3 things to stay as well as we can and keep everyone safe. We have to wash our hands for 20 seconds. We have to stay at home or in the garden, and we have to have fun. And I think that third one about having fun was the one that really resonated with her, going, yeah, what are we going to do for fun? But it's really important that we do, because otherwise this will suck us in and drain us. And we don't know how long this is going to go on.
No.
So we have to find pleasure and joy in our lives, whatever they look and feel like now. We have to find those opportunities for joy.
And I agree with you there completely. And also, if people can't afford, let's say, therapy, you know, a session, and let's just say all the frontliners that you're talking about, and they've never been to a therapist before, they can't afford the 50 quid, the 80 quid, the 100 quid, whatever it is, and they're not on a public waiting list that's going to take them 2 years. There's obviously certain things that people can do that will help, like whether it's yoga, whether it's getting up in the morning, not staying in bed till 12 o'clock in the day. Like, even for me, if I don't get up in the morning before, like, I'm an early riser, but if I don't get up before like not 10 o'clock, if I stay in bed after 10 o'clock, I actually kind of feel a bit miserable for the morning. If I don't put my makeup on, I feel shit if I don't put my makeup on, because I can't look at myself in the mirror. Like, if my hair is awful, I've been miserable. I mean, I know these are all shallow things,
but they're not really, though, because that's our armor. You know, that's our defense strategies. They're important.
like, aren't we going to have to give all of these people tools or advise them on tools that if they can't reach out and get proper therapeutic, as you say,
Yeah.
you know, support, is there somebody, should there be somebody looking after all of these people so that they're being told, okay, you know, go for a walk in Wicklow every Sunday for an hour? I mean, I'm just saying the most basic things that may build you up, because you know yourself, even if you did do an hour in a forest, it does make a huge difference to your whole psyche. So aren't we going to have to really come up with something to support these individuals that isn't this expensive therapy solution that we don't have in this country anyway?
You know, and I think it's about resources, because we have a lot of expertise in trauma in this country, but it's about how many people, and the demand, supply and demand basically is what that comes down to. But there are creative ways of bringing those experts together to look at creating a very bespoke wellness package, because a lot of companies, especially the large companies now, be that supermarkets or hospitals, have wellness programs or have committees that are working on this and that do these kinds of mindfulness, yoga, eating well, bring in dietitians and nutritionists and people to do exercise,
inspiring people, all that kind of thing.
Movement breaks. I think that's really important. And at the moment, one of the things that I think is coming out of this whole thing is the generosity of people in sharing themselves, their skills, their knowledge. There are so many yoga, Pilates, mindfulness tutorials. There are people who do kind of online coffee virtual meetups, you know, for parents, or especially I think if you're single parenting at home at a time like this, you're trying to work, single parent, teach. I mean, it's the multiplicity of roles and the demand people are under is just immense. And it does come to a point where we have to just, you know, be it look out a window, exhale, and just kind of ground ourselves and say, okay, I actually can't do it all. And I don't need to do it all. What can I do? And start with that. But you were right, you know, about the getting up. You know, I don't think people need to get up at 7 if that's their usual thing for work. But I certainly think we need to be up by 9 or 10. We don't need to be wearing the suit we'd wear to the office, but we shouldn't be in pajamas all day. You know, I think we have to have something that marks, I'm now in the living part of my day. Otherwise the day just blurs and the weeks blur. And a bit of a schedule can be just such a structuring technique to write out on a piece of paper, how am I filling my day, be that for myself or be that with my children or my family. You know, at what point of the day is the work part, or are we tagging each other in and out, and how are we doing that? When is the fun play part, and how am I going to experience that? Is it just, you know, kids know how to play, they really don't need a whole lot of structure and help from their parents on that, but maybe as parents we need a little bit of structure to go, God, do I know how to play, never mind the kids. And you know, that we're doing something that's tactile, sensory, skin touch based, that we look at ways that we can be with, not just doing, but simply be with in those moments of meeting. Because I think we underestimate that. I think this is a great opportunity, Debbie, for people to embrace a bit of boredom. I know it's a word that not many people respond positively to, but we have forgotten how to be bored, and we have lost the value of being out of boredom comes desire and creativity.
No, I totally agree. I think
just have to embrace it.
I mean, at the moment I have a whole, as you know, well, we work in Russia, and at the moment it's interesting to the children over there are all madly on the Facebooks and Instagrams, because they're now in lockdown and they've no family. So it's amazing to see what's coming from the children over there, even just from the point of view, it's trying to reach out to them and say to them, don't be worrying, we're here, we're watching you, you know. And we've 2 or 3 pregnant at the moment, and they're single moms, and they're locked down, and the panic kind of, so you're trying to say to them, give them simple things, you know, just simple things to take their mind off it, or simple things to do. But I can't go on forever with you, Joanna, because we can't post these things if they're too long. But the one thing, can I just ask you as an adult going forward, what changes do you, like, should we come up with a set of commandments? I mean, not that I'm religious or anything, but that what changes are you going to make in your life? What changes do we all need to make in our life going forward? I mean, we're going to have to strategically change the way we're doing things, or we're going to keep getting what we always got.
I agree with you. And I think, you know, for me, where I really look at eyes on the prize with this, how can we positively reframe it? Because it's a terrible experience. And there are people who are really sick and people who are dying. And that is awful and tragic for everybody involved. And there's the fear we're living in. But if we look, what after this, life beyond this, I would really love to see that as a society, we meaningfully embrace more family-friendly work practices. I think this does show and challenge those companies who've been resistant to this, that people can work very efficiently from home. They don't need to be commuting 2, 3, 4 hours a day to get to their jobs. They can be productive at home. And that is investing in family-friendly policies, because actually how we've all been living and working is a part of why the idea of being alone with our kids all day, how am I going to entertain them? What am I going to do with them? Because for many of us, we don't get to be with our kids all day. They're cared for by third-party childcare while we're racing to do work, beat traffic, and get back to pick them up, to embrace those 15 minutes a day before they go to bed. So I think actually this does shine a light on us becoming more family-friendly, more child-centered in our work practices as a society. I think it also breaks down some of the anonymity that had emerged in Ireland between neighbours, particularly in, you know, new developments and built up areas where it really wasn't unusual not to know your neighbours, or beyond a hi, how are you wave, not really have engaged or interacted. And I think that's a positive, that we have that sense of globalization in our communities, that we're together, and that strength in unity, that piece. I would love to see those come out of this. And I think, you know, that there's been talk about how this is a leveler, everyone's the same in this, and I just don't agree with that. I never have. I think the people who have struggled are currently struggling more, because they're more likely to be in, you know, lower paid jobs to begin with, struggling, or have less resources and supports to begin with, less access, you know, health wise, all of that. So I actually think that the inequality in society has been amplified by this, and it's something that we need to move beyond lip service and really.
I agree with you. I mean, the privileged are able to sit at home on their lovely laptops and you know, do a Zoom call twice a day with their boss. You know, that's the privileged.
Totally,
you know, I totally agree with you. I mean, there was a girl I think on CNN last night making that exact point, that it's really the lower paid workers that are the ones out there on the cold face of it now, really, while the higher paid workers are able to sit at home and isolate beautifully, you know. But I definitely think we all have to start thinking about what actual materialistic changes we're going to have to make in our life, because we're over globalized, we're buying too much, we're bringing in too much from China, it's unbalanced. The Mother Earth is kicking back now. I really do feel she's kicking back, and I think we're going to have to change things, or in a year's time we're all going to be in lockdown again, you know, which none of us want for our children or for our grandchildren. You know?
No, not at all. And I think, you know, we need to invest in strengthening the relationships and in repair following a rupture like this. You know, I haven't seen my parents in weeks. They haven't seen my child in weeks. That's very unusual for us. And I feel that, as does everybody else. You know, I really feel that separation. And I think, you know, it should, I hope, like you're saying, move our focus from the stuff back to what really matters, which is the relationships, and really investing in the here and now, and in the relationships we have access to right now. Put down the phone and actually see each other in real life.
Okay, well, that's a lovely note to end on. And say hello to your lovely mom, and I hope she's well and through all this. And listen, thanks a million, Joanna. We'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon, Debbie.
Bye. Keep up the good work. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.